It is a rainy day today, and I'm gonna make a video. This is my review for the 2021, what should have been 2020, movie Cruella, with Emma Stone as Cruella Reveiew. So, a while back, I heard that they were gonna do a live-action prequel for the Disney character Cruella, and I'm like, do we need this again? And by again, I mean, do we need some movie about a character whose origin we never asked about? And so I'm like, okay, Disney, you be you, you do your thing. And so I just kind of rolled with it. And then I started to see photos. I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then COVID happened. We didn't get to see it in 2020. And then I saw a trailer for it in 2021. And I was like, okay, I didn't know that I needed to see this movie, but now I really want to see it. And so I was won over by the trailer. And finally, I got to see it last weekend. So here's the funny thing. There's going to be spoilers in this review, so spoilers. If you don't want to hear what they are, clock out now. But from here on out, it's not safe. So, the movie. When I first saw it, I walked out of it and I couldn't say I loved it. But the best description I would say was, that movie was delicious. So, the movie Cruella. Now I can say that I love it. It is delicious and I love it. So, one of the things that I wondered is, how are they going to explain her hating the Dalmatians? And within the first 10 minutes, I'm like, oh man, I hate Dalmatians now too. But they do a wonderful job of telling her origin story and letting you know how she became the way she became. And so, the two side characters from the cartoon, they get backstories and they get fleshed out. One of them really fleshed out. Sorry, that was a fat joke in 2021. Don't cancel me! But anyway, yeah. And one of them is a voice of reason. One of them is comically sort of, dumb but good-hearted. And yeah, that's their sort of shtick. But it kind of goes to show how she got to where she is. There's kind of a sort of Charles Dickens quality to it of, living and growing up on the streets, and then one of their friends does something to make it where she gets this job at this place, this fashion house, but all she does is scrub toilets. Then she gets drunk, she messes up with one of the mannequins, and the film's main antagonist, the Baroness, who's a total douche in this movie, played by not Emma Watson, not Emma Stone, Emma Thompson. Yes, that's the other Emma that exists. So anyway, the villain, she sees the sort of thing that she's made and she's created, and she's like, oh, you're interesting, dear. And then she gets a job at her designing company. But it turns out there's this necklace that she has, and it belonged to Cruella's mom. Now, in the first part of the movie, she's called Estella, and Cruella was a nickname she got as a kid. So what happens next is the Baroness says that an employee stole it from me, but I got it back. And then it becomes Estella's mission to not just get the necklace back, but to sort of bring down the Baroness's empire. And she does so by out-styling her and out-arting her and just saying, I'm better than you, but not just saying it, proving it. Whereas the Baroness, it's a really interesting parallel in sort of what was going on with Britain at the time. The Baroness, you could say, represents the stereotypical image of the old sort of stuffy, uptight, tea and crumpets Britain, and Estella or Cruella represents, punk rock and, the sort of cultural transformation that Britain was going through at the time. Anyway, so she does get under the Baroness's skin. She does everything the Baroness does, but better. And all the time she's playing this persona of Estella, which is who she really is, but it's not who she's becoming. So there's this major development where Cruella's two goons walk home and they don't realize they're being followed. So the house gets burned down. But then one of the Baroness's butlers or whatever saves Estella / Cruella and reveals to her that the Baroness is actually Cruella's mom. Everybody in the theater was like, what? Like, we didn't see this coming. It was kind of the Luke, I am your father moment. Excuse me. But anyway, so then that sets up a thing where later on she gets the Baroness's estate and stuff. But the whole movie, it is just delicious. That's the best way I can describe it. So, one of the things they did, there are a few things I liked or I found interesting. So, they do have some minor they have characters from the cartoon in it who are, they look different, but, whatever. And one of the things I sort of, at the time I took issue with, but on reflection, I'm like, okay, that's not such a big deal. In the old cartoon, she would say, Anita, darling. And in this, they kind of reveal that darling is actually her last name. And I thought, okay, that's a bit too on the nose. But then I thought, oh, wait, if somebody had a last name like that, and darling is actually, sort of a way that people address each other and call each other, if there was wordplay, I would totally do that as well. And there is kind of a mid-credit scene that sets up the Dalmatians. The Baroness owns Dalmatians. I should have mentioned that. And Emma Stone winds up taking them and controlling them. And they must have puppies at some point, because in a mid-credit scene, she gives each of the two side characters puppies, and they're named Pongo and Perdita. So I guess that's a tie-in to the eventual movie, but I don't think there's going to be a sequel or anything. So anyway, this movie almost got really dark. One of the ways that we gain sympathy for Cruella, I'm saying this midway through the video, is that we see that Cruella was sort of a misunderstood creative who didn't really fit in at school. And she got kicked out of school and her mom had to go ask a favor. I should say her adopted mom, because later on we find out the Baroness is her biological mom. But anyway, Cruella causes mischief, and then the Dalmatians are they go after Cruella, but then they jump over something and they knock Cruella's mom off a cliff and she dies. But what happens next, it's later on revealed that the Baroness called the dogs on Cruella's mom and had her killed so she could feign ignorance. So that's how you go from how could Cruella ever hate Dalmatians to, oh man, I hate them too. And I know I said that already, but the Baroness does something where she's like, Dalmatians, they're beautiful and vicious, just like me. And oh wow. So one of the things that happens later on in the movie is the Baroness has her presentation, and then that goes nowhere. And then Cruella has this sort of impromptu sort of rock concert fashion show, and she's wearing a coat that looks like it's made out of the dogs. So you briefly believe that, oh my gosh, did she? And you think that for a solid minute until like 7 minutes later where you find out, oh no, that's not the case. She just made that pattern. But you thought it for like a while, like, oh wow, she's gone there. Now, there were a few things that I wasn't so thrilled about in this movie. For all the praise I give it, I'm going to have to, take it to task for these. But it almost feels petty to say. It does that thing that, Martin Scorsese's been doing for forever, where he takes music you love and he sprinkles it throughout. Now, this movie does it great. Some people complain too much, but I think it's, fantastic. But there are 1 or 2 moments where there was like a 7 or 10 second cutaway where they used a song. And I'm like, you didn't need to use it for that. What you could have done was just either come up with a score for that scene, or you just, not have anything. But those are few and far between. And yeah, like I say, it's a nitpick. Other stuff, there were some action scenes where I thought, okay, the CG doesn't convince me. It does seem a bit too blue screeny, and I pick up on the artifice. I mean, it's not like 90s CG or mid-2000s CG, but it's one of those things that stood out to me. And it's like, I mean, it's forgivable. We can't all be Chris Nolan and be like, I wanted to shoot it in real life on set because that lends it this sort of tangible quality that, the audience is aware of and that they can pick up on the artifice. I mean, we can't all be that. And, logistics-wise, who knows? But, again, one of those things that, so, if it was littered throughout, I'd have a problem. But it was one scene, and yeah. So, overall, I love this movie. I'm probably going to go see it again soon. Definitely didn't think I would want to go see this movie when I heard about it, but yeah, and I'm glad that I see it now when I'm like 33 and not 20, because had I seen it when I was 20, I was way more eccentric back then. I probably would have wound up, dyeing half my hair black and the other half white, and then 33-year-old me would be like, what were you thinking? So go and see it if you've got the opportunity. It's a great flick. Yeah.